Hello, everybody. It's Mr. Wessner back with another episode of Mr. Wessner's Read Alouds. Today we're going to read a great book. I know I normally do chapter books with my Read Alouds, but this is a special book. I recently discovered this series called Ordinary People Change the World. And I discovered this series. It's written by a man named Brad Meltzer, who I'm familiar with from the things he's done for adult readers. I hadn't realized about the work he had done for young readers until a show premiered on PBS Kids called Xavier Riddle in the Secret Museum. So if you're not familiar with that show, I highly recommend you check it out. It's an awesome, awesome show. My 4-year-old daughter and I love watching it together. And I love it's a show about history, and I'm a history nut. Anybody that knows me knows how much I love history. And when I was a kid, some of the first books I really discovered that I really enjoyed reading were biographies. Biography, of course, is a book written about a person's life. And this Ordinary People Can Change the World series by Brad Meltzer is a series of biographies, and they're just a great collection of people and amazing people. And just taking a look at how their lives started as ordinary people, just like you and me, as the show says all the time, and that ordinary people can grow up to be extraordinary through their choices, through their character traits, through some of those things. So I've really enjoyed these books and discovering these books and discovering the show Xavier Riddle in the Secret Museum. So I wanted to share one with you. And it just so happened Brad Meltzer wrote books about two of my absolute favorite entertainers, people. So we're going to start today with Jim Henson. I'm wearing my Kermit the Frog tie, which probably doesn't really look like a Kermit the Frog cut tie because I'm using the green screen behind me. But Kermit has always been one of my favorite characters. I love Jim Henson, the creator of the Muppets. His sense of humor, his sense of creativity. So he's just always been an icon of mine. I was about 10 years old when he sadly passed away at a young age. And ever since I've just truly enjoyed his work. So if you've never checked out stuff by the Muppets, do yourself a favor. Look up some clips of the old Muppet Show on YouTube or some of their other types of entertainment. They're just great entertainers. And then later Jim Henson made some other really creative, more adult types of or more grown-up types of things. The Storyteller series that he created was amazing. Just such beautiful work and beautiful puppetry. So let's read today about Jim Henson. And on the back of the book it says, "I am Jim Henson. I will keep believing and keep pretending," which is one of the iconic lines from the original Muppet movie. So here we go. I Am Jim Henson by Brad Meltzer. And I forgot to mention Christopher, and I'm so sorry, I may be mispronouncing his name, but Christopher Eliopoulos is the illustrator of these books, and the illustrations really make them come to life. Jim Henson, the way he draws these is like little caricatures, so that they kind of look like kids, but they kind of look like their adult selves at the same time. Really enjoy the illustrations in these books as well. So you might want to pick up a copy, check it out yourself so you can really break down the illustrations here. I am Jim Henson. And again, some of the illustrations on the screen, anywhere there's green like Kermit here, it's probably going to be distorted because of the green screen. Oh good, you're here. What's the fun of a story if you don't have anyone to share it with? Growing up in Mississippi, I used to love to watch birds. I even made my own book where I'd list each bird I saw and add my own drawings. That bird up there is my favorite, the blackbird. Blackbirds have fun personalities, and I also love their other name, the grackle. Don't you just love funny names like that? My whole life, I've loved kooky words. Want to know what else I loved? Laughing. As a kid, this was one of my favorite family jokes. My mom used to play it on my brother and me. She says here, she's pouring milk on his cereal. She says, "Say when." And Jim's going over here going, "Gee, that's enough. Mom, that's enough. Mom!" "You didn't say when," Mom says, so she overflows the cereal bowl. So just some funny humor. At 8 years old, I'd come here to the movie theater. Every Saturday, this was my favorite place. For 15 cents, I could get a bag of popcorn and spend the whole day watching cartoons, newsreels, action movies, and comedies. My favorites were the ones with wild clothing and far-off locations, like the Old West or foreign countries. The rest of the week, my friends and I would recreate what we saw in the movies, using homemade props and costumes. Bedsheet as a turban. Look at the great snake charmer! Look, a star tattoo! Cork, cut like a star, then charred black. Star tattoo that bad guy had in the movie. So they'd be creative. They'd come up with creative ways. So this little guy has a star on his arm. You probably maybe can't see it there, but with a little imagination, we'd start pretending. There was no limit to what we could create. My grandparents played a big role in my life. I got my middle name Mari from my grandfather, who loved to laugh too. But he never laughed at anyone, never made fun of people. As for my grandmother, she was my best audience. When she came over to visit, we'd use paint, glue, and crayons to make the most amazing art projects. She was the one who encouraged me to draw things that made me happy. Monsters with giant mouths and birds with big eyes. Ta-da! I adore it, Jimmy. Now tell me a story about each creature. You see, there's Jim with his grandparents there. Okay. Those days with my grandmother changed my life. She encouraged me to tell stories. She supported my love of reading. And she was amazing with a needle and thread. She could sew anything. What is that? It's a coat made out of an army blanket. Like it? Gee, I really do. But the most important thing she taught me was that with my imagination, I could do anything. I could be anything, including a performer. One night during a skit in Cub Scouts, I had one of my friends stand in front of everyone with his hands behind his back. Then I put my own hands in, and what's so funny? I'm being serious here. I can still hear the crowd laughing. Now, if you're familiar with Jim's puppets, that's the way the Swedish Chef is performed. So he took that idea from when he was a kid in Cub Scouts and turned it into one of his most famous Muppet creations. Swedish Chef, among some other Muppets, are performed that same way. I always loved a good performance. Growing up, I listened to shows on the radio like Green Hornet, The Shadow, and one of my favorite comedians, a ventriloquist named Edgar Bergen. Even though Edgar Bergen did the voices, I never thought Charlie McCarthy or his other characters were puppets. They were human to me. His work was magic. Magic in the real sense. It seemed impossible. That's what magic is. Creates wonder. It creates dreams that inspire. I'd seen their pictures in newspapers, but here with each show, an ordinary object came to life. Once upon a time, a long, long ago. Funny, nothing ever happens nowadays. Something happened when Edgar spoke through Charlie. The puppeteer wasn't just sharing jokes. He was sharing the best parts of himself. And people were listening. When I was 13, a new technology changed my life. At a friend's house, I saw an invention called television. You have a television? We just got it. Isn't it cool? Can we get a TV? Can we get a TV? Can we get a TV? Can you please stop? Sure. Now can we get a TV? I wouldn't give up. Soon, my parents gave in. On TV, I found comedians like Sid Caesar, Milton Berle, and Jack Benny. One of my favorites was Ernie Kovacs, who tilted the set and camera so everything slid sideways. I especially loved variety shows, which had big casts that would sing and dance and do comedy. And then there was Kukla, Fran, and Ollie, a show where puppets made jokes and sang with a human co-star. The way they talked to each other, it was like those puppets were alive. Right away, I knew one thing. I wanted to work in television. At 16 years old, I went looking for a job at the local TV stations. Sorry, kid. I was at WTTG. Then he went to WMAL. Sorry, kid. WTOP. Sorry, kid. There has to be another place that'll hire me. They all said no. But like the time I begged my dad for a TV, I never gave up. So he's demonstrating the character trait of persistence. Persistence. So he wouldn't give up. Perseverance. He kept going. He kept trying. So he knew what he wanted. He had a goal in his mind, and he was willing to work for it and do what he needed to do to make that goal come to life. Soon after, a local station announced it was looking for a puppeteer. I'd never used a puppet before, but my whole life I'd loved creating. This was the job I wanted. So how'd I get it? The same way you get any dream. Hard work. I went to my high school library, took out books on puppetry, built a few puppets, and went back to the station. Now I am a puppeteer. Will you hire me? They gave me a chance. That was all I needed. Was my first show a success? No, it was canceled. But did I give up? Not a chance. My partner and I continued creating, continued working hard, and eventually we got our own 5 minutes before the Tonight Show. Along the way, we came up with a name for our characters. We called them Muppets, playing around with the word puppet. But really, it was just a fun word, like grackle. By the way, this is Jane. She worked on the shows with me. We're going to get married one day. Wait, we get married? Don't ruin the ending. There you see Jim and Jane. If you look closely, some of his early creations. I think Ralph the dog is over here, along with some others. Our show was called Sam and Friends. We needed a new puppet, and the answer was right in plain sight. I was 18 years old and found my mother's old wool coat. I cut it apart and sewed a new body. My grandmother taught me that one. I gave it a pointed face. I glued on the halves of a ping pong ball for eyes. And then I became the one who performed his voice. Yes, he was turquoise back then. He wasn't even a frog. But he did have a name. Kermit. There Jim is sewing Kermit. With each show, I kept inventing new characters, dreaming up new ways to make people laugh. On TV, unlike a puppet stage, there were no walls, so we could film our Muppets from far away or bring them really close for an easy laugh. And while old-fashioned puppets had frozen expressions, our Muppets' faces could move. We could do faces that were funny, angry, or even sad. To make our Muppets seem even more real, we crossed their eyes slightly. This gave them focus. Now, they started to come alive. There we go. This is Sam over here from Sam and Friends. There you see the different facial expressions. Okay. But do you want to know my real secret? Practice. There we see Jim's perseverance again. We would practice in a mirror over and over until it was just right. The only way people would feel a sense of wonder was if we could give each character a life of its own. Let's do it again, fellas. This is Jerry Jewell, who writes for the Muppets. Don Saleen, who helps build the Muppets. And Frank Oz, who will be the voice and performer of Grover. And even Yoda. Who's Yoda? Don't ruin the ending. And Frank Oz did tons of other voices as well. He was Cookie Monster. He was Fozzie Bear. He was Bert. So many wonderful characters from Frank Oz. We did commercials and performed on other shows, but like so much of life, it was all just training for our next adventure. 2 TV producers named Joan Gans Cooney and John Stone were about to give me the opportunity of a lifetime. We want to create a show that will change the lives of children, especially those whose families don't have a lot of opportunities. We want a show that can help them learn to read and count. It can be funny, right? They even had a name for it. And there's Jim with some of his fellow performers and creators. There's his meeting with that Joan Gans Cooney and John Stone, and I bet you know the show they created here in just a second. If you don't, you will. On November 10th, 1969, the first episode aired. It was a smash hit, and of course it was Sesame Street. That's me. I'm Big Bird. We began... Oh, I'm reading this in the wrong order, it looks like. Since kids loved the Muppets, we built Muppets who could interact directly with the kids. We began with a big yellow bird, who was a child himself. That's me. I'm Big Bird. Then we added a grouchy green Oscar named They know who I am. Yeah. I showed you that picture already. So lots of Sesame Street Muppets, and of course the wonderful humans that were on there with the Sesame Street Muppets as well. It was one of the first shows to have kids of different races playing and learning together. It taught kids how to share, how to take turns, and how to get along. Every episode, Sesame Street taught the ABCs. C is for cookie. And 1, 2, 3s. That's four beautiful bats. Certainly with all its zany creatures, it made us laugh. But at its best, with songwriters like Joe Raposo, Sesame Street made us think, especially about what kind of people we wanted to be. I'm going to try to sing here. May not be pretty, but green's the color of spring, and green can be cool and friendly like, and green can be big like an ocean, or important like a mountain, or tall like a tree. Look up the real version of It's Not Easy Being Green, sung by Kermit the Frog, and it's much, much better, I promise. Through song, the whole world heard that green, and all of us, can be anything. Isn't it beautiful to see the world like that? In fact, Kermit's humor never came from making fun of people. It came from bringing us together. By focusing on the good in everyone, my own sense of wonder took over, and my dream of entertaining others came true. And there we see C is for Cookie and The Count, performed by the great Jerry Nelson. And of course, Kermit singing It's Not Easy Being Green, and so many other great Muppets, classic Muppets there. The Muppets and I went on new adventures and got to bring along some favorite old friends. It's the Muppet Show with our very special guest star, Mr. Edgar Bergen. Every week on the Muppet Show, frogs, pigs, bears, and creatures of all kinds reminded the world that despite all the chaos, chaos! There's Animal, that's another Frank Oz Muppet. Okay. Sorry about that, folks. As I was saying, on The Muppet Show and on Sesame Street, I wanted our audience to know that despite all the chaos and despite our differences, there is nothing more fun than being together. From there, I never stopped creating and dreaming. Thank you, and thank you. Oh boy, what a crowd. And I don't approve of belly dancers. Why can't they dance on the floor like everyone else? Waka waka. Good grief, the comedian's a bear. Okay, so there we see lots of the Muppet Show creations. Statler and Waldorf and Fozzie, Gonzo, the Swedish Chef, so many others. Just wonderful, wonderful characters. In fact, the more we performed, the more fun we had. And the more my dream grew, bringing millions of people together. What can possibly be more magical than that? Life's like a movie. Write your own ending. Keep believing. Keep pretending. We've done just what we set out to do, thanks to the lovers, the dreamers, and you. And that's from the reprise, the ending song of the Muppet movie. And it calls back to the great Rainbow Connection song that begins that movie. And that's another one. If you've never heard the Rainbow Connection, that is one of my all-time favorite songs. Definitely worth looking up and listening to. Beautiful message in that song. In my life, I loved to create, but the secret behind my best creations wasn't a strong hand or a catchy song or even a funny voice. It was a simple idea. There's good in all of us. Sure, we're all different. Some of us have beards or no hair or blue fur or green flippers. But goodness lives within each of us. That's an idea that should never get old. Believe in the good of the world. Create something new. Share what you love, and find others who believe in those favorite things you dream about. Together. We can make magic. Today, Sesame Street is watched by millions of kids in more than 150 countries worldwide, from Brooklyn to Bangladesh. At its peak, The Muppet Show was watched by over 235 million people per week. Did you know he even started the Jim Henson Foundation to promote and develop the art of puppetry? Not to ruin the ending, but is this the ending? I think that's the secret. As long as there are new dreamers, new people who love to entertain and pretend, this is a story that never ends. Guess what? I want to create cool things too, just like you. Gee, thank you so much. Don't let anything stop you. And there are so many great things in this picture. The wonderful 80s fantasy movie Labyrinth is over there on a poster, along with The Dark Crystal, which I think just came back as a series on Netflix. One of my all-time favorite Christmas specials is Emmett Otter's Jug Band Christmas, shown over there. There's the Storyteller poster that I mentioned at the beginning. So many amazing creations from Jim Henson. We didn't even talk about Fraggle Rock. Fraggle Rock's another great series with positive messages as well, and great music. So many wonderful things created from Jim Henson. It starts when we're kids. That's when we learn some of the best things in life. Laughing, sharing, imagining, dreaming, creating. Never stop doing them, and never stop being kind. There's nothing wrong with being a do-gooder. I am Jim Henson, and I will keep believing and keep pretending. And it ends with one of Kermit the Frog's quotes. It says, I don't know if I showed you that last picture. There we go. And then ending here with one of Kermit the Frog's favorite or most famous quotes. I've got a dream too, but it's about singing and dancing and making people happy. That's the kind of dream that gets better the more people you share it with. And again, that's from Kermit the Frog, and that's also from the Muppet movie. And we actually have a final ending here with Animal, who says, book over, go home, bye-bye. So that's the end of that book. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit about Jim Henson. Pick up some biographies. Check them out. They're great, great stories. And like I said, I especially love this series. And hopefully you can enjoy checking out some of Jim Henson's work as well. Enjoy. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.